Hey everybody, today we've got another political shift. This time it's going to be for president between 2008 and 24. This is going to take us from the peak of Obama to the peak of Trump. So these are going to be some pretty big red shifts. But it's not really about bragging rights. It's about seeing how much the shifts were in which states. So we've got a map coming up at the end. But first, let's get a little bit of background about these two elections. In 2008, that was a big change election. Barack Obama won with 365 electoral votes. He carried 28 states plus DC and Nebraska second, and his popular vote share was 52.9. John McCain finished in a distant second with 173 electoral votes. He carried 22 states and he got 45.7. 16 years later, Donald Trump wins with 312 electoral votes. He captures 31 states plus Maine second, and he's at 49.8% of the popular vote. Kamala Harris finishes in second with 228. She's got 19 states plus DC and Nebraska second, and her popular vote is 48.3. So that's going to take us into this superb looking spreadsheet. In a quick introduction to these columns, we've got the states on the left, then the 2008 vote for Obama, then for McCain. Then it's going to be the 2024 vote for Harris, followed by Trump. Then we've got the shifts for the Democrats between those two elections, followed by the same for the Republicans. And finally, we've got the net change between the two parties between the two elections. And this final column has shading. The darkest colors are 10 or more points, and the lightest colors are under 5 points. And the last thing I'll say is I try to double check the data, but there's usually a couple of states that have a small discrepancy depending on the source. Now with that out of the way, let's go to the first state. We've got Alabama. In 2008, Barack Obama got 38.7%, but John McCain won this state with 60.3. Then in the last election, Kamala Harris sank to 34.1. Donald Trump bumped it up to 64.6. That's a loss of 4.6 for the Dems and a gain of 4.3 for the Republicans, and an overall total net shift of 8.9% away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans. So that's how this works. Now we can quickly go through the rest of these states. Most of these are going to be red shifts, but in Alaska, we actually had the biggest shift toward the Dems out of all the states. They moved almost as much as Alabama in the opposite direction. We're looking at a shift of 8.4% bluer. In Arizona, that state also has gotten bluer by 2.9. Arkansas is the first state with a double-digit shift, 10.8 toward the GOP. California, a blue state, but it got 3.8% redder. Colorado is a state known for its blue trajectory. Obama flipped and won it in 2008. And between these two elections, it only got slightly bluer, just by 2%. Connecticut is another blue state, but it got redder by 7.9. Delaware, even redder than that at 10.3. And Florida, redder still by 15.9. In Georgia, it's a similar story as Arizona. This state got bluer by an even 3. Now we've got a string of rightward shifts. In Hawaii, a state that Obama has a strong connection with, that got redder by a massive 22.2. Idaho, about half that, 11.2. Illinois, another state with an Obama connection, that moved 14.2% toward Trump and the Republicans. Indiana, that's a state that Obama was able to snatch in 2008, but since then, a ton of rightward movement there by 20 points. Iowa was also won by Obama, but it got even redder than Indiana by 22.7. Kansas, only slight movement there by 1.3. Kentucky, a lot redder by 14.4. Louisiana, a lot less by 3.3. And Maine, back up to double digits by 10.4. Now we've got another blue shift. We've got Maryland. Super blue state got a little bit bluer by 3.1. Massachusetts, on the other hand, that's a very blue state, but that actually had the smallest shift out of all the states. That moved it just 0.6% toward the Republicans. Now we've got a bunch more red shifts. We've got Michigan at 17.8. Minnesota 6.1, Mississippi 9.7, Missouri 18.2, Montana 17.5, Nebraska 5.7, Nevada 15.6, New Hampshire 6.7, New Jersey 9.6, New Mexico 9.1, New York 14.4, North Carolina 3.5. In North Dakota, Obama got it down to single digits in '08, but since then in '24 it swung a huge 27.8 toward the Republicans. Ohio again in that direction by 15.6. Oklahoma much smaller by an even 3. Oregon 2.1. Pennsylvania back into double digits by 12%. Rhode Island even more than that at 14.1. South Carolina 8.8. South Dakota over 20 points, 20.8. Tennessee 14.6. Texas is redder in 24 than it was in 2008. Not by a lot, but it's by 1.9%. But in Utah, this state clearly defied the trends. It moved left by 6.8. Vermont back toward the right by 5.5. Virginia, little movement there, redder by 1.1. Washington got bluer by 1.2. West Virginia had the biggest shift out of all the states, just a little bit more than North Dakota, and that is redder by a colossal 28.8. Wisconsin about half that at 14.8, and Wyoming was close to that at 13.5. And then we've got Washington, D.C. Apparently McCain and Trump got the same percentage, and that comes out to the Capitol getting redder by 2.2. And finally, we've got the national popular vote shift. That is 8.7 toward the Republicans. So that's your list of states, and those are all of your shifts. But let's help visualize this data. Let's take it all and put it on a map. Here it is. We've got very similar shading. The darkest colors are 10 or more points. This time, the lightest colors are going to be under 1%. Those are going to be the tilt margins, and there's only one of them, and that's in Massachusetts. So we've got 4 levels of shading. And what are the takeaways from any of these shifts? Well, as I already said at the beginning, it's not really about bragging rights. We just saw the national popular vote shift at almost 9% toward Trump and the Republicans. So naturally, when you go from a high point on one side to a high point on the other, you're going to see a ton of movement. In this case, it's toward the Republicans. And yeah, at a glance, they totally dominated this map. Red states got redder, and plenty of blue states also moved hard in their direction. If you break it up by the current electoral votes in each state, you can see Republicans gained 470, just 68 for the Dems. But it's still very interesting to see where are those 68 in this sea of red. Well, there's 8 states here. 2 of them have already been long-standing blue states. That's Washington and Maryland. Colorado is also known as a blue state, but in 2008, it was just cementing in its status as a blue state as Obama flipped and won it compared to 2004. Alaska and especially Utah are red states, but those are states where the Trump brand has not proven as effective in other places like the Rust Belt. So Utah is still very, very red. Alaska less red, but they're still safe states for the GOP. The other 2 states, Arizona and Georgia, those states both used to be reliably red. They've since become swing states and voted for the Dems in 2020. And even though they bounced back in 24, they've both followed a similar path, and they clearly stand out amongst all these other red states. Now, as for these big red shifts, they're most concentrated in the Midwest plus the upper Great Plains. It also extends a little bit into the Northeast. Parts of the South and the lower Great Plains, except for Florida, those states did not have as massive red shifts as some of the others. Part of that is going to be because these states were already very red even back in 2008, so they were not really undergoing as much of a political realignment as some of these other states. But on a glance, this might show you where Trump's brand has been more effective than not. Now, everything is not going to line up perfectly. Even a state like Texas is redder in 24 than it was in 2008, and that was a state that Democrats had long talked about becoming blue at some point in the future. But the demographics they were banking on did not pan out. The playbook has completely changed under Trump. It was hard to imagine this back in 2008 under Obama, but there were a good amount of states here flipped between these elections. A few of them are Nevada, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina. And at the time, in 2008, Obama was an absolute rock star. He had a very convincing win in the Electoral College and the popular vote. Republicans did a lot of soul searching. They thought they would have to rebrand themselves and get more moderate on some issues like immigration. Once Trump came along, the establishment went crazy. He was supposed to be the guy that's totally unelectable, but far more times than not, he's proven to have his finger on the pulse of the electorate, way better than the Republicans or almost anybody could have imagined. It's not all going to be policy, some of it's going to be personality. Obama and Trump, both very effective in that department, even though they're a little bit different. So you could always dig deeper into some of these specific states, even the specific counties, and also the different demographics to find out why they moved in one direction or the other. But for now, these are the shifts between 2008 and 24. It's fascinating stuff, so let me know in the comments. What do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? We know the map is dominated by red, but what about the lighter red states and some of the blue ones? Which state surprised you the most and which surprised you the least? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.